obviously that's like the least, that's something you may come across quite a bit, okay? And more than likely depends on the scenario. If you're in a place, if you're in a park, if you're in a party situation, a lot of times you may have the person just grabbing just to get your attention, okay? But it's kind of like a preventive thing where this is like initial. This person's really not trying to attack you per se. They're just trying the wrong way, maybe to get your attention, okay? But if they're going to grab you and take you away from somewhere, more likely they're going to grab your whole body. And that's something we're going to take a look at in a little bit. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to intermix some of our lecture part into our actual practice. The first thing we're going to take a look at the lecture part, and I have 3 A's that I use my self-defense seminar. The first one is accessibility, okay? Accessibility, kind of rating like how high a risk factor you are to being attacked. Because believe it or not, there is a certain way to gauge like how high your risk is. Now, does that guarantee that you're not going to be attacked if you have a low risk? Not necessarily, but it does lower your risk chances. There's a big difference between being in a crowd of people and being by yourself in a dark alley. Okay, you're more susceptible to being attacked when you're by yourself in the dark, isolated, than you are in a group during the day. You know, like in this kind of setting, the chances of being attacked at this point is pretty low. You're in the group, it's daylight, you're in martial arts school. All these factors play a role on your individual risk factor. Okay? So what we're going to take a look at, let's take a look at how to gauge your risk factor when you're on the street. Okay? And we use the 1 and 0 factor. Like in my companion manual that I'll have available in a few weeks, there'll actually be a sheet on there where you can kind of like put 1 and 0s in there to see where you stand on this risk factor. Okay? So the first thing to do is kind of go over some of the basics you think of, kind of give you some of the idea, the mentality of how predators and attackers work. Okay, first of all, is it light or day? Okay, I mean, is it night or day? Okay, so that kind of plays a role too. Okay, criminals like the dark. Okay, while some still come out during the day and do things during the day, you have to be, they're not completely stupid. They understand that they're going to be witnesses. They understand that the police are out, you know, and about. There's a lot of witnesses, a lot to see during the day. Your visibility from here is quite far during the day compared to at night. Okay, so if you're walking around at night, okay, you need to give yourself a 1. But during the day, you can give yourself a 0. So it's kind of like a mentality you have. Another thing is, what are you wearing? Okay, as far as jewelry, your purse, and things like that. Okay, criminals tend to be capitalists. All right, they want as much goods as they can get for minimal work. Okay, so if you're walking around, you know, with a pearl necklace, and expensive earrings, and Gucci bag, they're going to recognize that as a more valuable target than somebody who may have been out jogging and may not have any jewelry at all. Okay, depending on the type of attacker we're talking about, but this is one of those factors you can give yourself a 1 or a 0 on, because if you're going out and you are carrying pretty expensive stuff, you're a little bit higher risk at that point. Okay. Next thing, are you alone or in a group? Okay. If you're with a group, you're less likely to be attacked because they don't want to have to deal with your friends. Okay? Kind of like going to a bar. You don't want to talk to girls in a group because, it's with their friends. But they do like it better when you're alone. So if you're walking by yourself, okay, you have to give yourself a 1 because now you're isolated and you're alone. Okay, as opposed to in a group setting. All right. This is why kids that when you're out at a festival or something, it's even more important to stay together as a group. Now your parents are always saying, stay together, stay with me, because being in a group, okay, puts you guys in advantage. The type of predator you guys face are different than the predators that they're going to face as older adults. Okay? As adults, their type of attacker or predator will be someone who wants jewelry or horses. Okay? Predators you may face want you specifically. Okay? So a lot of times what they'll do is they'll try to isolate you away from the group. Hey, can you help me find my dog? Or have you seen my daughter? Show you a picture. To get you away from the group. Okay? You want to make sure that you're keeping in mind of your surroundings to know, am I in a group or am I by myself? Okay? If you're by yourself, give yourself a 1. As you can see, the factor kind of goes up and up. Okay? But not only that, but also what you're wearing is also a factor. Are you in high heels or running shoes? Okay? A lot of attackers don't want to chase you. Okay? So if you're walking around in tennis shoes, okay, you're in a better position to run. Whereas if you're 4-inch heels, okay? If you're walking around in 4-inch heels, then they identify that as somebody who can't run very fast. Okay? Someone who can't really escape too easily because they're too busy trying to walk on the stilts. Okay? So while 4-inch heels may be appealing, a lot of girls like to wear 4-inch heels, you may want, when you get like 23, 24, right Right now it's flats. But, but as you get older, keep in mind too that does make you more susceptible to being unavailable to run away. Okay? Constrictive clothing also plays a factor. Okay? Tight skirts to where you can barely move your legs, the same thing. You can't really run too fast. Okay? So keep that as a factor. If you're out in the street, to make sure you keep that in mind as well. Okay? So a runner, okay, while they may be alone, isolated on a bike path, they have jogging equipment and running shoes. So if someone does tackle the average Joe on the street that maybe want to come up, that have no valuables, then that kind of gives you an idea of the kind of predator that might be attacking you at the same time. But it gives you a better advantage to running as well, because you've already got all the equipment you have. Just change the beats of your songs, and you're off. You know, change your sprint music, and you just take off of the path. Okay? So when we take a little bit, what we'll take a look at is we'll take a look at on the avenue of escape. We're going to use a lot of these numbers to kind of teach you guys how to have avenues of escape. We kind of come up with this idea based on defensive driving. You know, if you're in a driving class, they always say, you know, make sure you have a lane that an accident pulls out. You always have somewhere to pull off to, whether it's shoulder or that. Same thing when it comes to self-defense. Okay? A lot of it is awareness. A lot of it is just being aware of what's around you. Okay? If you're walking around at night, 2 in the morning, okay, by yourself in high heels, wearing expensive jewelry and a purse, down a dark alley, okay, you're at a much higher risk, okay, and you kind of, and not saying that you will be attacked, but you have to consider that, like, you have to be aware that all of a sudden, I'm not in a very good position to be alone right now. Maybe I should have brought someone with me. That's why the Marines always have a buddy system. We go anywhere around the field, we always have to have a second person with us, so that if we, you know, if something happens, you know, we know what's going on, okay? So all these risk factors, so when you guys are out there, you kind of have to gauge. If you find yourself in that situation where you're walking down dark, secluded street at night, wearing expensive jewelry, stuff like that, you know, you just need to be more aware at that point and really keep your radar up, because now you're in situations where you're at a much higher risk than you were earlier in the day when you were with your family at the Air Force Museum, you know, surrounded by security and all that thing. Which is another thing to keep in mind too. You know, where area are you in? Is there a lot of law enforcement there, or are you in a part of the city where the cops will need to go? You know, you got to be aware, like when you're walking around, how safe is that particular area as well? If you're in an unsafe environment, give yourself a 1. Okay? If you're in a safe environment, okay, give yourself a 0. You know, most of the time at school, you feel pretty safe. You're in a crowd during the day, lights are on, teachers everywhere, locked doors. You know, your risk level of being attacked by an average attacker drops considerably, as opposed to when you're walking home from school. The level goes up a little bit because now you're walking with a group, but you may find yourself walking by yourself down the street. So if you're a walker, you know, keep in mind as you're walking home, if you're by yourself, kind of put your radar on, okay, and that time really be wary of anybody approaching you, anybody paying too much attention to you.